Hello, today's lecture will be about linear algebra and combinatorics. We will first define two vector spaces Rn and F2n and understand the concept of linear independence. We will use this concept of linear independence to solve three combinatorics problems. The way we will do this is convert problems about sets, unions, and intersections to problems about vectors and linear independence by associating a vector to each subset. And using this and certain modified techniques, we will solve these combinatorics problems. So that's the plan for today's lecture. So let's start with the uh, definition of Rn and F2n, and then we will go on from there. So first I will talk about the vector space Rn. Yeah. So for this lecture, it will not be important to talk about the general definition of a vector space. So we will focus on just the two vector spaces Rn and F2n, which I will talk about later. So Rn, so what is Rn? So Rn uh, is, so firstly it's a set. So it's a set of columns x1, x2, xn, where each component is a real number. So if you see in the PDF, it's the set of all columns of the form x1, x2, xn, where x1, x2, xn belong to real numbers. And this set is called the set of vectors. Okay, so any element of this set, um, I will refer to as a vector. Okay, and what can we do with these vectors? So the first thing we can do is we can add two vectors. So we just add them component wise as shown. So if you have a vector x1, x2, xn, where x1, x2, xn are real numbers, and you have another vector y1, y2, yn, where y1, y2, yn are real numbers, then the sum is defined to be x1 plus y1, x2 plus y2, xn plus yn, where x1 plus yn, y1, x1 plus y1 is the regular real number addition, x2 plus y2 is again the regular real number addition, xn plus yn again is the regular real number addition. So in particular, if we look at the all zeros vector, which we also call the zero vector, when we add it to any other vector, we get the vector itself. So 0, 0, 0 plus y1, y2, yn equals y1, y2, yn. Yeah. So the first thing we can do with this set of vectors is add two vectors. The second thing we can do is scale a vector by a real number. Okay. So as shown here, if C is some real number, it could be negative, it could be zero, it could be positive, it could be irrational, any real number. If we scale a vector x1, x2, xn, it is defined to be cx1, cx2, cxn. So just component wise, you multiply. Okay. So this is the vector. So we call this the vector space of real numbers. It's a set of such columns with n components. You can do two things. You can add two vectors and you can multiply a vector by a scalar, also called scaling by a real number. Okay. So let us look at a simple example. So let's take the example of R3. Okay, so each vector has three components. Here it has one. So the first example shows vector addition. So 1, 1, 2 plus 1, 3, 2. You just add component wise. So 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 plus 3 is 4, 2 plus 2 is 4. Yeah, and we can scale by some number. So we can scale by minus half, say. So when we scale the vector 10, 4, 1 by minus half, we just multiply it component wise. So minus half times 10 is minus 5, minus half times 4 is minus 2, and minus half times 1 is minus 2, minus half. Yeah. Okay. So that's the vector space of real numbers. Now we can also picture these vector spaces more geometrically. So first, let us look at the picture of R2. So what does R2 look like? Yeah. So what I want to do is for every vector of, so for each vector in R2, I want to think of it as an arrow that starts from the origin and goes to some point in your standard Cartesian plane, the two-dimensional XY plane. Okay. So if I have the vector x1, x2, I want to visualize it as an arrow that starts from the origin and goes up to the point x1, x2, as shown in diagram 1. Okay. And it could be anywhere on this plane. So minus of x1, x2 is just the same arrow of the same length but in the opposite direction. Okay, so geometrically, when I take the negative of a vector, or in other words, scale it by -1, it just flips and it's in the it's in the opposite direction. Yeah. So minus of x1, x2 is just the same, is an arrow which starts from the origin and goes in the opposite direction as x1, x2 and has the same length. Okay. So here is another example where I have shown uh, these vectors being scaled. Okay, so if you have a vector x1, x2, 2 times x1, x2 is also on the same in the same direction but twice the length. 3 times x1, x2 is thrice the length. Minus 2 times minus 2 x1, x2 is just in the opposite direction. Yeah, but double the length. And the origin, we think of it as 0, 0. So the 0 vector is just the point. It's a very small arrow. You can think of it like that. Yeah. So it's an arrow of length 0. So this is how we visualize vectors. They're just arrows in some Cartesian plane. Yeah. And now let's visualize vector addition. Okay. So vector addition, if I have a vector x1, x2 and a vector y1, y2, y2, which are arrows. Okay, we are visualizing um, vectors as arrows. So there's some. So what you do geometrically is that you have these two arrows, you complete it to a parallelogram as shown, and then draw an arrow to the end point. I mean, draw the arrow of the diagonal. That is that will be x1 plus y. That the end point of that arrow will have coordinates x1 plus y1, x2 plus y2. Okay, so this is the geometric way of adding two vectors, and we can do this in R2 and R3. And in higher dimensional vector spaces, it's harder to visualize, but it's the same thing. So yeah. So let us look at just a small picture of R3. So in R3, it's the same thing. We visualize a vector as an arrow in a regular space. Okay, so which has three coordinates. Yeah. So vector is just an arrow starting from the origin to the endpoint, and the origin the arrow of 0 length starting from the origin we think of as 0, 0, 0. Okay. So I've defined vector spaces and I've told you how to think of them geometrically. The geometric aspect won't be too important for us in this lecture, but it's important to understand. So now let us come to a different vector space, which is almost the same. So the vector space F2n. Okay. But in this case, the set of vectors is finite. Okay. So the set is all columns x1, x2, xn, but each coordinate belongs to the set 0, 1. So the set is all columns x1, x2, xn such that x1, x2, xn belongs to the set 0, 1. Okay. And since each coordinate has two possibilities, this is a finite set of size 2 to the n. Okay. And now how do we add? So I have to tell you how we can combine two vectors and give another vector. So the way we add in f2 to the n, yeah, is x1, x2, xn plus y1, y2, yn is defined to be x1 plus y1 modulo 2 x2 plus y2 modulo 2, xn plus yn modulo 2. So what that means is, if x1 plus y1 turns out to be 2, we just write 0. If it turns out to be 0, we just write 0. If it turns out to be 1, we just write 1. So in other words, if x1 plus y1 is even, we write 0. If x1 plus y1 is odd, we write 1, and so on. The same thing for every other coordinate. Yeah. And we can also scale, but now we have only scalars, two scalars, 0 and 1. So we can either multiply by 0 or 1. So if we scale by 1, it keeps the vector the same. And if we scale by 0, it just takes everything to 0. Yeah. So just let us look at a quick example. So example f2 to the 2. So these are all column vectors with two components, each component having entries in the set 0, 1. So all the vectors are 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1. So there are only four vectors in this set. And this is an example of vector addition in this set. So 0, 1 plus 1, 1. We add the first component. So that gives 1 modulo 2. And the second component is 2 modulo 2. But 1 modulo 2 is just 1 and 2 modulo 2 is 0. Okay, so in this set, when we add the vector 0, 1 plus 1, 1, we get the vector 1, 0. Okay. So let us move on to the next important concept in vector spaces, that is of linear independence. So definition 1, let v1, v2, vk be vectors in Rn or f2 to the n. So v1, v2, vk are n length columns with each entry either in R or in the set 0, 1. So these could be some vectors in either the vector space Rn or f2 to the n. Then v1, v2, vk are said to be linearly independent if you have a linear combination. So if c1 v1 plus c2 v2 plus dot 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 plus ck vk is equal to 0, then it must be that c1 c2 ck equal to 0. In other words, there is no non-trivial linear combination of v1 v2 vk that gives the 0 vectors. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that v1 v2 vk are said to be linearly independent. So that if I scale some if I scale the vectors by c1 c2 ck and add them, and it somehow gives 0, the only way it could do that is if all the coefficients were 0. So there's no other way. Okay, and if v1 v2 vk are not linearly independent, then we call them linearly dependent. Okay, so let's look at an example again. So the example again in R2. So consider the vectors 1, 0 and 1, 1. Okay, are they linearly independent? Okay, yes, they are. So how do we show that? So if you have some linear combination which gives 0, yeah, so by the way, these sort of combinations c1 v1 c2 v2 ck vk, where c1 c2 ck are real numbers, are called linear combinations of the vectors v1 to vk. Yeah, so how do we prove that these two vectors are linearly independent? If c1 1 0 plus c2 1 1 is equal to 0, then we want to show that both c1 and c2 have to be 0. But this is easy because then we have that c1 plus c2 equal to 0. When I write 0, I mean the 0 vector, the vector with all components 0. And this clearly implies c1 and c2 is 0 because the second component is c2, and if that has to be the 0 vector, then c2 must be 0. And then the first component is just c1, so, and since it's a 0 vector, c1 also has to be 0. Yeah, so this is both these two things imply c1 comma c2 equal to 0. So now you may ask, to these two vectors in R2, can I add any other vector and still maintain the property that these vectors are linearly independent? So can I add a third vector? I don't know, say 1, 0, 1, 2, 1, something like that, and still make sure that they're linearly independent. Okay. So for example, you may say that let's try. So we can take 1 0, 1 1, and 2 1 and ask, are they linearly independent? But no, that's not true, because I have demonstrated a linear combination which gives 0 with non-trivial coefficients, meaning not all 0. So so I have -1 times 1 0 plus -1 times 1 1 plus 1 times 2 1 is equal to 0. But not all uh, so that shows that these three are linearly dependent. Okay, so they're not linearly independent. So in general, it is true that in R2 you cannot have more than two linearly independent vectors, and we'll state this as a theorem in the next slide. So just another example in Rn or F2n. Okay, so let E1 equal 1 0 0 0 0, let E2 equal 0 1 0 0 0, and let En equal to 0 0 0 0 1. So Ei has 1 in the ith position and 0 elsewhere. Okay, and then it is clear that all these are linearly independent. So we have n linearly independent vectors in Rn or F2n. Okay, so I'm saying that either view these vectors as vectors in Rn or F2n, same argument works. And why are they linearly independent? Because if you have some linear combination which is 0, C1 times E1 plus C2 times E2 plus Cn times En, which is 0. But the sum is just C1, C2, Cn, and if that's 0, each of the Ci's has to be 0, as I've written. And now again, we can ask the question, can we add some vector to this set, E1, E2, En, and still maintain the property that they are linearly independent? Okay. Okay. So this is the important theorem we will use in our applications. If V1, V2, Vk in Rn or F2n are linearly independent, then it must be that k is less than equal to n. Okay. In other words, if k is greater than n, then V1, V2, Vk must be linearly dependent. Okay. So uh, let us just quickly recap what we have till now, because this, if you, to understand the rest of the talk, you'll need to understand up till here, and this theorem is the important theorem which we'll apply. We will not prove this, but maybe later you can read it on your own. So we define vector spaces Rn, F2n. Okay, we thought of how to visualize vectors in R2 and R3 and visualize the corresponding operations on the vectors, namely adding two vectors and scaling a vector by a constant. And next we define linear independence. So the definition was, some vectors are linearly independent if the only linear combination of the vectors that gives 0 is the 0 linear combination. And then we did a few examples, and it seemed like in R2 you cannot have more than two linearly independent vectors. In Rn you cannot have more than two n linearly independent vectors, and indeed that is true. If v1, v2, vk belongs to Rn or F2n, and suppose they are linearly independent, then there can't be more than n of them. Okay, and just this is the important theorem. Okay, and just a short other thing we'll need about an extra structure. So the dot product in Rn or F2n. So the dot product, so up till now we've been adding vectors and multiplying vector by a scalar. So when I say scalar, it's either a real number, or in the case of F2n, 0 or 1. But we can do another thing with vectors. We can combine two vectors to give a real number. Okay, and this is called the dot product. So if definition 2, if v1 equal to x1, x2, xn, and v2 equal to y1, y2, yn are two vectors in Rn or F2n, then v1 dot v2 is defined to be x1 times y1 plus x2 times y2 plus xn times y. Okay, so what we do is we look at the first components, first component, we multiply them, add to that the product of the second two components, then and keep adding, and then add to that the product of the n component. And if this was f2, these were, we were talking about vectors in f2 to the n, then we would do this computation modulo 2. So the final answer of v1 dot v2 would be a number in the set 0 comma 1. If we were doing dot product with vectors in Rn, these vectors would be, I mean, the dot product would be a number, a real number. Okay. So just a quick example in R2. So if I have the vector, say 1, 2 dot 1, 1, I just add 1 times 1 plus 2 times 1, which is 3. And in general, x1, x2 dot x1, x2, the same vector dot itself is x1 squared plus x2 squared. And now, yeah, so that's just an example. And in fact, the dot product in R2 can be thought geometrically, as you may have noticed that x1 squared plus x2 squared is actually the square of the length of the arrow we visualized corresponding to the vector x1, x2. So in fact, you can understand what this dot product means, but that's not important for us today. So let's move on to an example in f2 3. So in f2 to the 3, for example, if we have the vectors 1 1 1 and 1 1 0 and we do the dot product, multiplying the first components we get 1, multiplying the second components we get 1, multiplying the third components we get 0. So the dot product is 1 plus 1 modulo 2, which is just 0. Similarly, 1 1 0 0 1 1, if we dot product them, multiplying the first components we get 0, second components we get 1, third component we get 0. So it's 1 modulo 2. The third example is similar, 1 1 0 dot product itself 1 1 0, and it's equal to 1 plus 1, which is 0 modulo 2. Yeah. So just a small remark is that in this case, we got the dot product of two vectors with itself being x1 squared plus x2 squared. And this is equal to 0 if and only if both components are 0. So in R2, if you have a vector whose dot product with itself is 0, it must be the 0 vector. But this is not true in f2 to the 2 or f2 to the 3. In Rn, it is true because the dot product with itself is a sum of squares. So it is equal to 0 if and only if each entry is 0. But in f2 to the n, this is not true. So this is just a small difference between how the dot product behaves in the two vector spaces we've talked about. Okay. So now let us start with the first application. Okay. So first, no, let us talk about some simple properties of dot products. Okay. So if you have the vector v equal to x1, x2, xn, and w equal to y1, y2, yn, and u equal to z1, z2, zn, and say lambda belongs to R. So we're talking, so suppose these are vectors in Rn, yeah, the real vector space. Then the first property that it satisfies is that v dot the vector sum of w plus u is equal to v dot w plus v dot u. Okay, so that we can distribute the dot product into this bracket. Second thing, v dot w scaled by lambda. So v dot lambda w is equal to lambda v dot w, where this first scaling is happening with a real number and a vector, and the last is just lambda is a real number and v dot w is also a real number. So this is real number multiplication. And the third property is v dot w is equal to w dot v. Okay. These three properties are very easy from the definition. Just write down all of them in terms of the coordinates like x1, x2, xn, y1, y2, yn, z1, z2, zn, and it will be clear that they hold. Okay. And the same properties hold over f2, making sure that lambda now doesn't belong to R but belongs to the set of scalars in f2 to the n, which are just 0, 1. Okay. So this is, so we had a vector space with some structure, meaning we could add two vectors and scale by scalars which were real numbers or 0 1, depending on whether we were talking about the vector space Rn or F2 to the n. And now there's an additional structure we have where we can talk about dot product of two vectors. So dot product of two vectors gives us a scalar, and it satisfies these three properties. Okay. So now let us start with the first application, okay, where linear algebra helps in solving a combinatorics problem. So the odd town problem. So odd town is a town with n people, okay, where n is some natural number, and they want to form committees so that each committee has an odd number of people, and every two committees have an even number of people in common. And zero is allowed, meaning that two committees may be disjoint. Okay, the intersection might be zero. And now they ask, what is the largest number of committees we can form? Okay. Okay. So this problem asks, um, what is the, I mean, what's the maximum number of committees satisfying these two properties that we can have in this town? Okay. So let us just state this more mathematically. So the set of people, we will write it as square bracket, I mean, n with brackets, 1 to n. So 1 is person 1, 2 is person 2, n is person n. And now committees are just subsets of 1 to n. Okay. And non-empty. So let us say we don't allow non-empty committees. And what we want is that uh, if C1, C2, Ck are committees in odd town, we must have that Ci, the size of Ci is odd, that is the number of members in committee I is odd, and the intersection of two committees, Ci intersection Cj, is even for different I and j. So if I take Ci and Cj and look at who all they have common and how many of them they have common, that number should be even. Okay. Okay. So how do we convert this into linear algebra? And say something about, so what linear algebra will help us to do is to say that we can have at most some number of committees. Okay, so what is your guess, and how do you think we can use linear algebra to convert this combinatorics problems and obtain some kind of vectors and ultimately use linear independence? Okay, so the first step is to define a characteristic vector of a subset associated to a subset. Yeah. To each subset C of 1 to n, we can get a vector in F2 to the n. Okay. Or R to the n. Depending on the scenario, it will be useful sometimes to think of it as a vector in F2 to the n and sometimes in a vector as a vector in R to the n, as you will see in the following examples. Okay. So if C is a subset of 1 to n, VC is the vector with n components x1, x2, xn, where xi is equal to 1 if person I belong, or the element I belongs to the subset C, and 0 if I does not belong to C. So this vector just tells you which all elements belong to this set. So if there's an element in position, if there's a 1 in position I, then we know that I is there in the set. And if there is a 0 in position I, then we know that that element is not in the set. Okay, and these vectors uniquely determine the subset, obviously. Yeah, and they belong to F2 to the n because they have only 0 1 entries. Okay, and this is called the characteristic vector associated to C. So just a quick example. So n equals to 3. So big set 1 to n is 1 comma 2 comma 3, and say our subset is 1 comma 2, then VC is equal to 1 1 0, the first component is 1 because the element 1 belongs to the set. The second component is 1 because the element 2 belongs to the set. And the third component is 0 because the element 3 does not belong to the set. Okay, so this is the characteristic vector associated to C. So now how could we use these vectors associated to C and try to solve the problem? So the first step would be to translate the conditions of odd town, the rules of odd town, into some more linear algebra conditions, means conditions using dot products or things like that. Okay. Okay. So now here, so step 2. Okay. So suppose C1, C2, Ck are committees that satisfy the odd town rules, namely that their intersections are of even size and they themselves are of odd size. Okay. Then we must have that VCI dot VCI is equal to 1 for all committees. Okay. That is because VCI dot VCI just counts the number of um, people in that committee or number of elements in the set CI, and but we're doing computations over F2, where if it's an odd number we make it 1 and if it's an even number we make it 0. So since the condition is that it has to be odd, the VCI dot VCI must be 1 if these committees satisfy the odd town rules. And second, VCI dot VCJ, okay, when we multiply it out we will just get ones wherever there's one in both entries. So that will count the number of number of elements in common. But since we're doing computations over F2, if that number is even it will become 0. So the condition that two different sets intersect in an even number of elements is the second condition, and this condition that each set has an odd number of elements is the first condition. So we have converted these two conditions said in English language to a condition about the dot products between the vectors and vectors themselves. Okay. So remark, in general, if we take two subsets A comma B of 1 to n, then VA dot VB is the size of A intersection B when VA and VB are viewed as vectors in Rn. Okay, so of course 0, 1 vectors also appear in Rn. And if we take the dot product and don't reduce modulo 2, meaning if it's even, we don't make it 0, we just leave it as it is. And if it's odd, we leave it as it is and don't forcibly make it 1. Then the dot product actually counts the size of A intersection B, and VA dot VA counts the size of A intersection A, which is just the size of A, okay, in Rn. But when we reduce it in F2n, if we do the dot product in F2n, then what we get is not the size of the intersection, but whether the intersection is odd or even, or whether the size of the set A is odd or even. Okay. So that is VA dot VB is the size of A intersection B. If the dot product is computed viewing the vectors as vectors in Rn, and VA dot VA is equal to size of A. Okay, so now this is the main idea. So we claim that VC1, VC2, VCK are linearly independent as vectors in F12. Okay, and why are we trying to do this? Because then we'll know that there are not too many of these vectors, because we had the theorem that in an n like F2n, if you have some linearly independent vectors, there cannot be more than n of them. So let us prove this. So the way to prove this is, suppose there is a combination which is 0, and then we show that each coefficient must be 0. So this is the way to prove linear independence. So if you have some vectors, you write down the linear combination and somehow prove that each coefficient must be 0. So if alpha v1 vc1 plus dot 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 plus alpha k vck is equal to 0, for some alpha 1 coefficients alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha k belongs to the set 0, 1, Okay. Then we want to show that each alpha is 0. So how do we do that? So what we do is compute the dot product. Since we have information about the dot product, compute the dot product of VCI with both sides of the equation. So the left hand side is some expression in terms of the VCIs and the alphas, and the right hand side is the zero vector. Okay, so when we compute the dot product of VCI with both sides of the equation, we get VCI dot product, this linear combination alpha 1 VC1 plus dot dot plus alpha k VCK is equal to VCI dot 0. Okay, so VCI dot 0 is just 0. Yeah, a vector dot product 0 is the zero vector, meaning all components 0 is always just the zero vector. It's just always the zero real number. Sorry. And on the left hand side, we use the properties of dot product, which we had discussed earlier, where we take in VCI into this bracket and then take the constants outside the alpha is. So this, the left hand side you get is alpha 1 VCI dot VC1 plus alpha 2 VCI dot VC2 plus alpha k VCI dot VCK, and this is equal to 0. Okay. So we've done this for a particular I, but now we use the properties. Okay, we use the two properties here. VCI dot VCI is 1 and VCI is dot VCJ is equal to 0 when I not equal to j. Okay, so using those two properties, what we get is that in this in the in this equation alpha 1 VCI dot VC1 plus dot dot plus alpha k VCI dot VCK equal to 0, only one term will remain because VC. So say I was 1. Okay, say I was 1, then only VCI dot VC1 VC1 dot VC1 would be 1 and all others would be 0. So similarly in this, for a general I, only the ith term will remain. And what will be the ith term? It will just be alpha I VCI dot VCI. But VCI dot VCI by property 1 is just equal to 1. So we'll get alpha is equal to 0. So this is what we wanted to show. We wanted to show that if there was a linear combination with coefficients in 0, 1, which gives 0, then each coefficient is 0. So we have proved that, okay, by taking dot product on both sides and using the two properties. Basically, the two properties are the rules of odd term. So therefore, and we are done. Therefore, by theorem 1, we have that the number of committees is less than equal to 1. Okay. And furthermore, you might want to ask, can we actually reduce this? I mean, say that k is less than n minus 1 or something like that, less than n by 2 or something like that. And that is not true because you can give a simple example where you can form n committees which satisfy the odd term rules. So that is, if we let the CIs be the singleton elements, meaning C1 equal to just the set 1, C2 equal to just just the element 2, and Cn equal to just the element n, then this satisfies the odd term rules. So just a few, so this is the first application of linear independence. So just once again, what we did was we converted the combinatorics problems about sets to a problem about vectors by considering the characteristic vector of each set. And there were some conditions with odd and even, so so intuitively we wanted to view them as vectors over F2, meaning in F2 to the n. And then we wrote down the rules of odd town in terms of dot products. And then we proved that VC1, if C1, C2, CK are committees, then VC1, VC2, VCK must be linearly independent, which directly gave us by the earlier theorem that there can't be more than n of n committees. And then now we've shown that in fact we can always form n committees satisfying the rules. So n is the answer to the question. Okay, so here are some exercises. So show that these characteristic vectors of these committees which satisfy these rules are linearly independent as vectors in Rn. Okay, and one possible hint is that first do it if assume the coefficients are rational numbers and do it. Okay, so in general, it is true that if you have some vectors which are linearly independent, then you can so some 0 1 vectors are linearly independent over f2, then when viewed as vectors in Rn and you allow coefficients in R, they are also linearly independent. Okay, so that's exercise 1. You can try that. And the exercise 2 is that our example was a little silly, meaning we just put one, each committee just had one element. Can you give some more non-trivial committees? Okay, so find other collections of n committees that satisfy the rules of odd town. Okay, so one possible hint is, so do it when n is even, that and n odd separately. Oh, I think there are many ways to do it, so you can try that too. Okay, so this is the end of the first application of of linear independence, and we did linear independence over f2 to the n. We will see an application where we'll actually have to do linear independence over r to the n to get the result. Let us start with the second application. So I call this application the union problem. Okay, so what is the problem? The problem is, suppose A1, A2, AK is a collection of non-empty subsets of 1 to n. Okay, additionally, suppose they have the following property. The property is, there does not exist disjoint non-empty indexing sets I comma j which are subsets of 1 to k such that union over little I belongs to capital I of AI is equal to union little j belong to capital J of AJ. Okay. In other words, this condition means that you cannot choose some number of sets among the AIs and then among the remaining choose some other subset, so that the unions are the same. So you cannot form two different groups, leaving out some, and form two different groups whose unions are the same. So this is what it means. Okay. So now the question is, how large can K be? Okay. So it's plausible that if K is very large, then somehow we'll be able to group these into two things and leaving out some of the AIs such that the union of the first group is equal to the union of the second group. Okay. So let us just look at an example to understand what the property means. So example 7. So suppose n equal to 5 and k equal to 6, and my sets are a1 equal to 1 2, a2 equal to 1 3, a3 equal to 1 4, a4 equal to 1 5, and a5 equal to singleton 1. Okay, and a6 equal to 4 comma 5. So these are subsets of the set 1 2 3 4 5, and there are 6 such subsets. And this does not satisfy the property because we can group A3, A4 versus A5, A6, and such that A3 union A4 is equal to A5 union A6. We are allowed to ignore some sets. So we ignored A1, A2, and we took on one side A3, A4, and on the other A5, A6, and the unions were the same because A3 union A4 was just 1 4 5, and A5 union A6 was also 1 4 5. So these sets do not satisfy the property. Okay. The question was, if they satisfy the property, how large can the collection be? Okay. So now just one more example to understand the property. If I take subsets of 1 to n in the general case of n, and we set a1 equal to 1, a2 equal to 1 2, a3 equal to 1 3, and an equal to 1 comma n, then this indeed does satisfy the property. And why is that? Because if we ever take one of the AIs for I greater than 1, it will contain the element I. Okay. But for I greater than 1, no other set will contain that element I. So therefore, you cannot have it on the union on both sides. So therefore, we cannot include the sets A2, A3, A4, A5, AN in our grouping. So we're only left with A1, but of course we can't form two groups with A1. So therefore it's not possible to form such groupings uh, with these sets. In other words, there do not exist indexing sets IJ, non-empty and disjoint, such that union over capital I of AI is equal to union over J capital J, union of J over J AJ. So therefore, these sets do satisfy the property, and there are exactly n of them. Okay, and that's important. So, so we know that n is possible. So can you get more than n? Okay, and we will see shortly that no, in fact, this is maximal counter example, meaning you cannot do better than this. So as before, to convert the question into linear algebra, let VAI be the characteristic vector associated with AI. In this case, we will actually view VAI as a vector over Rn, not F2n. Okay. In application 1, in the odd town problem, we viewed AI as a VAI as a vector in F2n. Okay. So VAI is a 1, 0, 1 vectors, the characteristic vector associated with the set AI. And we'll view it as a vector in Rn. Okay. Now we claim that VA1, VA2, VAK are linearly independent vectors over R. Okay. That is when viewed as vectors in Rn. Okay, and so let's start with the proof. And as usual, we start with the same thing. So first suppose that A1, A2, AK do satisfy the property in the question. Okay. And suppose for a contradiction that they are linearly independent. So suppose for a contradiction that there exists a non-trivial linear combination of VA1, VA2, VAK, it should be AK, not AN, such that gives 0. Okay. So suppose alpha 1 VA1 plus alpha 2 VA2 plus dot 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 plus alpha k VAK is equal to 0, where alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha k are real numbers that are not all 0. Okay. So once again, we've started with a collection which satisfies the properties. We constructed some vectors VA1, VA2, VAK, the corresponding characteristic vectors. And now we want to claim that they are linearly independent in order to get a bound on K. Okay. And suppose for a contradiction, they are not linearly independent. So we got a linear combination like this, which gives 0. Okay. Now we do the following thing. In this linear combination, there are some coefficients which are positive, there are some coefficients which are negative. Okay. And some coefficients perhaps which are 0. Okay. We will take the positive coefficients, we will leave it on this side. The 0 ones, anyway, those vectors, everything is 0 there. And the negative coefficients and the vectors, we will take it to the other side of the equation. Okay. So first, let u1, u2, ur be the vectors among va1, vak who have positive coefficient, meaning whose corresponding alpha I is positive. And let w1, w2, ws be the vectors who have negative coefficient. Okay. So first notice that if you have a positive coefficient, you must have at least one negative coefficient. So R and S are greater than equal to 1, meaning there is some vector among VA1, VAK which has a positive coefficient, and among W1, W2, Ws which has a negative coefficient. Okay. And we just ignore the vectors which have 0 coefficient. Okay. And now we write this linear dependence equation as A1 U1 plus A2 U2 plus AR UR equal to B1 W1 plus B2 W2 plus BS WS. So I've used these AIs because they are actually some of the alpha I's, but we don't know which ones. So I've just used some other variables to denote that. And we know so suppose A1, so we know that A1, A2, AR are greater than 0. And since we took the negative coefficients to the right hand side, they have also become positive. So B1, B2, BS are also greater than 0. Okay. So we have this equation where U1, U2, UR correspond to some of the vectors in our original equation, and W1, W2, WS correspond to some other vectors in our equation. Okay. Now We want to show that we will claim actually prove that the unions of the corresponding sets of the vectors on the LHS is equal to the union of the corresponding sets on the RHS. Okay, so how do we do that? So what does the union of the set of sets correspond to in terms of the character in the characteristic vector? So an element belongs to a union of some sets if and only if there is a one in that component of one of the of the vectors of the set. Okay, so first we'll show that if there is a one in some component of the vectors u1 u2 ur, one of them ur, then in that precise component there must be a one in one of the w1 w2 ws. Okay, is that clear? Then so if there is a one in the ith component of one of u1 u2 ur, then the ith component of the LHS will be greater than 0, because when we do vector addition there'll be a one somewhere in one of the UIs in the ith coordinate. So when we add up all the contributions on the ith coordinate, since there's a one somewhere and a1 a2 ar is greater than 0, we will get that that coordinate adds up to something which is greater than 0. Therefore, since this is an equality of vectors, there must be a 1 in the ith component of some wj on the right hand side. Because if if there wasn't, if all of the j's had 0 in the ith component, then the ith component of the sum would also be 0. Okay, so that shows that if there is some intersection element in the, I mean some element in the intersection of the sets corresponding to the LHS, then that element is also in the intersection of I mean union, sorry. So if there is a element in the union of the sets corresponding to the LHS, then there is a that element is also in the union of the sets corresponding to the RHS. Okay. So that's what I've written. So the one second, I forgot to mention. So this argument shows one direction, meaning if there is an element in the intersection of the sets corresponding to UIs, then that element is also in the intersection of the sets corresponding to WIs. And just reverse the argument. If there is a if one of the components of, suppose the, let's say the jth component of one of the WIs is one, then similarly we'll show that one of the same component of one of the UIs is one. Okay, so that will show the unions are the same. So the union of the sets corresponding to u1 to ur is equal to the union of the sets corresponding to w1 to w. Okay. And this contradicts the assumption that the sets we started with a1 a2 ak satisfied the property given in the question, meaning we could form two non-trivial groups where the unions were the same. Okay, so this proves that k is less than equal to n. Okay, and we also give an example, I think example 7, let's see, example 8, where I've demonstrated n sets. So n is the correct answer. The maximum k can be is in fact n. Okay, now let us move on to application 3, which will just be a modified version of this problem, but the proof involves just an extra step which is quite instructive to see how sometimes you just don't have to take the characteristic vector but have to modify it a bit by maybe increasing it by one coordinate or some such thing. Okay. So application 3, union and intersection problem. Suppose a1 a2 ak is a collection of non-empty subsets of 1 to n, okay, as before, and additionally suppose they satisfy the following property: there does not exist disjoint non-empty indexing sets I, j contained in 1 to n such that union over I, ai is equal to union over j, aj, and intersection over I, ai is equal to intersection over j, aj. Okay. So there does not exist a common partition where both unions are the same and intersections are the same. Okay. So here you expect the k could be possibly larger than for the previous condition, because now we have two conditions which have to be satisfied for our groupings. Okay. So let us look at an example to see what the condition means. So example 9, let a1 equal to 1, a2 equal to 2, an equal to n, and an plus 1 equal to 1 to n. Okay. Now note that the only possible groupings to make unions equal is if we take all the a1 to an on one side and an plus 1 on the other side. That is a1 union a2 union an is equal to an plus 1. Okay. But intersections of the left hand side and right hand side are not equal. Okay. So a1 to an plus 1 do in fact satisfy the above property. Okay. Meaning that there is no grouping which commonly has the same intersection on both sides and the unions on both sides. Okay. And in fact, surprisingly, n plus 1 is the correct answer. So you might expect it to be more, but you can we will show that it is actually n plus 1. So this example gives n plus 1 sets, and we will show that you cannot get more than n plus 1. Okay. So as before, we've done in the application 1, application 2, you must immediately have done this in your mind. Suppose a1 and a2 ak do satisfy the property, then we consider the characteristic vectors. Let va1 va2 vak be the corresponding characteristic vectors. But now we do something else. Okay. So the correct thing to do here is we modify the characteristic vectors by adding a 1 in the last component. So each characteristic vector is a vector with n components. So what we do is, for each characteristic vector, we just add another component and add a 1. So now these are vectors in Rn plus 1. So we set wa1 to be va1 with a 1 on the n plus 1 entry, wa2 to be va2 with a 1 in the n plus 1 entry, and so on, wak to be vak with 1 in the n plus 1 entry. Okay. And now we claim that wa1, wa2, wak are linearly independent as vectors in Rn plus 1. Okay. So we will try to mimic the proof, but here you'll realize how these last row ones help us deal with the intersections. Okay. So again, suppose a1 a2 ak satisfy the property, and suppose for a contradiction that these vectors in Rn plus 1 are linearly dependent, that is, there exists a non-trivial linear combination of wa1 wa2 wak that gives 0. So suppose alpha 1 wa1 plus alpha k wak equal to 0, where alpha 1 alpha 2 alpha k are real numbers which are not all 0. Okay, so this is a definition of linear dependence. So as before, let u1, u2, ur be the vectors among wa1, wa2, wak that have positive coefficient. Okay, and p1, p2, ps be the vectors that have negative coefficient. Okay, so in this linear combination of wa1, wa2, wak, some of the vectors have a positive coefficient, and some of the vectors have a negative coefficient. Okay, so we, as before, we take the negative coefficient vectors to the right hand side of the equation. So, and as before, we ignore the vectors that have coefficient 0. So we write this equation, this of linear dependence, the alpha 1 wa1 alpha k wak, as the equation a1 u1 plus a2 u2 plus ar ur plus equal to b1 w1 plus b2 w2 plus bs ws. Okay. And now, as before, a1 a2 ar is greater than 0, as they were the ones with positive coefficient, and b1 b2 bs were the negative coefficients taken to the other side of the equation, so they were also positive. But now adding the last ones in the last row ensures that their sums are also the same. right? Because if we consider the last row of this equation and the last row of this equation, then the last row of this equation is a1 plus a2 plus ar, because there's a 1 in every vector u1 u2 ur. And on the last component of this equation is b1 plus b2 plus bs. So we get to this, not only are all of these positive, but their sums are also the same. And this is the crucial fact that will help us to prove that the intersections are equal. Okay. And now, of course, these two, we will again, our groupings will be the sets corresponding to u1, u2, ur, and the other group will be the sets corresponding to w1, w2, ws, and the unions of the corresponding sets on the RHS and LHS are the same by the argument in application 2. So in the previous argument, we had this exact situation. So the unions are definitely the same. So now we have to argue that the intersections are the same. So what does it mean for an element I to be in the intersection of the corresponding sets of u1, u2, ur? What that means is the ith component of each of the u1, u2, ur contains a 1. Okay, so we want to prove that this implies that uh, I belongs to the intersection of the corresponding sets to w1, w2, ws, which means we want to prove that there is a 1 in all the ith components of w1, w2, ws. Okay, so now note that since the last component of all vectors are 1, a1 plus a2 ar equal to b1 plus b2 plus bs, I already mentioned this. And suppose I is in the intersection of the sets corresponding to u1, u2, ur. Okay, the ith coordinate of the LHS will then be a1 plus a2 plus ar. Okay, and now let's look at the ith component of the RHS. Okay, and now suppose the ith component of the RHS does not contain a 1 somewhere. That means the value there will be a some real number which is smaller than b1 plus b2 plus bs, because some of the one of the bis has been missed out. Okay, but then that number will be smaller than a1 plus a2 plus ar, because we had the condition that their sums are equal. And that, so that implies that in fact this is not possible, and the ith coordinate of each of the sets on the RHS must have a 1. This shows that if there is an element in the intersections of the sets corresponding to the LHS, then it must be in the intersection of the sets corresponding to the RHS. And an exact same argument reversed shows that if there is an element in the intersection of the sets on the RHS, it must be in the intersection of the sets in the LHS. Therefore, both the union of the sets corresponding to the LHS and intersection corresponding to the LHS is equal to the, I mean, union of the RHS and intersection of the RHS. So what I mean is, the we get that these groupings satisfy the property that their unions are the same and their intersections are the same. Okay? But this contradicts the assumption that A1, A2, AK satisfied the property in the question. When the question it said that there exists no such groupings. Okay, and this proves that our assumption that they were linearly dependent was false. Okay, so there, since and now, since the vectors which we used to get the contradiction were vectors in Rn plus 1, these modified vectors where we added a component of 1, wa1 wak, where we took the characteristic vectors and added a 1, they lie in Rn plus 1, and we proved that they are linearly independent. So that proves that the number of them is less than equal to n plus 1, that is k less than equal to n plus 1. And we also had an example to demonstrate that n plus 1 is possible. So the maximum k can be is n plus 1, and n plus 1 is attained. Okay. So this is the third example. And the change in idea of this example was that we not only took the characteristic vector of the set, but we somehow modified it by adding a component. And we did our we use those to prove linear independence. So just to summarize the applications of linear algebra we used, one was the odd town problem, where we just used linear independence over f2n. Okay, and the way we proved linear independence over f2n was via dot products, because the conditions in the odd town rules corresponded to easy conditions in terms of dot products between the corresponding characteristic vectors. In the second application, we did linear independence over Rn. Okay. There we just took the characteristic vectors, used linear independence, and then solved the problem. In the third example, we took the characteristic vectors as we did in the first two, but we added a component and then continued the argument. Okay. So these were the applications. So of course, as more linear algebra concepts are introduced, there are many more examples in combinatorics. So, but for today, since I only introduced linear independence, this is all I will talk about. Thank you.